When when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind-A with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind-A for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind-A for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind-A. I'm John Pollock alongside my companion for the next however long the show is going to be. Wai Ting, how are you?
Doing pretty good, John. Yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm joined by, I haven't let them speak yet, but I'm surrounded by 50 post-wrestling trainees who have been instructed to react to all of my jokes when I have any throughout this show. So they're all set. They're all 6 feet apart from one another. We're not going to be hard and fast on that rule. They have been tested. So we have all the post-wrestling trainees here at the post office to add some ambience to this particular show.
You've been surrounded by plexiglass, as am I.
Yeah, I'm going to, in case this whole wrestling thing goes south, we're going to play hockey.
Sounds like a great backup.
Or lacrosse. I mean, we'll get into it. This was maybe the most unique setup for any wrestling show we have seen, just in terms of the setting of which they were surrounded by.
Yes, that's right, yeah. Do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to talk about it later?
Let's just go into first some of our own stuff. We'll save that for all the Raw stuff. Off the top, we just want to talk a little bit about what is coming up this week on the site. We do have our Double or Nothing show that went up Saturday, as well as an interview up today with Jonathan Stoughton that you can go catch. I also want to thank W.H. Park, who joined us on Saturday night for Double or Nothing as well, to chat about the horrible story involving Hana Kimura from over the weekend. So if you want to check out any of that, it is all up at postwrestling.com. But this week, the major change we are adjusting, it's a temporary switch, but it's one that we're going to make this week for the time being. And that is, we are temporarily putting on pause the Café Hangout for Thursday afternoons. It's become very difficult, especially for me, doing the show in the middle of the day, but both of us want to keep a interactive show. We really like that element of the show. It's the main reason we do that show. So, Wade, do you want to talk a little bit about what we are planning to do in its place with one of our existing shows?
Yeah, that's right. So, my favorite thing about the Hangout on Thursdays really is just seeing all the activity in the chat room and hearing from callers. And we didn't want to lose that, so instead of doing it on Thursdays, we are going to be making Rewind-A-SmackDown on Friday evenings live. And so that means typically about, I would say, 15 minutes after SmackDown goes off the air at about 10:15 p.m. Eastern, John and I will be live streaming our recording of SmackDown, and we'll be taking phone calls at the end of it to hear your thoughts or just to discuss anything else in wrestling. And we'll be opening up a chat room, so it'll be on video, and this will be available for all patrons. And certainly, the time change will certainly be different for some viewers who are typically used to being available to us at 3 o'clock on a Thursday. This is instead going to be 10 p.m. on a Friday. So unfortunately, some of you might find it a bit more difficult, but then again, some of you might find it easier to actually, join us live for something like that. Especially now, I don't know how many of you guys even have plans on Friday night. So join us. John and I will be live talking about SmackDown. Whether or not you've watched the show, join us and interact with the chat room. This will be available for all patrons.
Yeah, this will be our call-in show for now, and obviously topics are not limited to SmackDown. Whatever you would like to discuss, it's open forum on Friday night. So that begins this Friday. Also coming up later this week, we've got yet another crazy idea from the British Wrestling Experience crew. They have put together a playlist of matches that they're going to be watching. The playlist, there's a link to it in the schedule that is up on the site. And they're going to be going through a ton of matches this coming Thursday on the show, and it is the BWE mixtape.
Man, like week after week, these guys are they're like a factory of just great podcast ideas. This whole pandemic is like the best thing that happened to these guys.
Can these guys maybe book some of these ideas on Raw? I mean, this brand-to-brand invitation, I think, has nothing on the big Euro transfer window.
They need to be booking the Viking Raiders Street Profits feud, I think. They can come up with something other than golf.
It would be so much more interesting if next week the Street Profits and Viking Raiders had to each catalog like 3 of their favorite songs that they were all going to listen to together?
No, it wouldn't, John. I think in theory that sounds like a great idea, but in execution, it would be terrible.
Well, I was going to say it might be difficult to get the rights to it, but WWE is not shedding any pennies now because they got the rights to use that Punisher logo for MVP tonight. So they're clearly
I don't know. They costumes, especially like, comic inspired costumes, seem to have like no real copyright attached to it. Like we see
even for the logo, like the actual logo itself.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen like other Marvel or DC inspired costumes in the past, haven't we?
We've seen inspired costumes. I don't imagine this is going to be kind of a deal,
no,
but to me, there's a difference between like Rey Mysterio coming out in an inspired costume or just wearing the actual like Superman S.
Yeah, I don't know what the legal grounds are with something like that. I would assume, something like a Punisher skull. I feel like I've seen often enough that I don't imagine it to pose a problem, but I didn't think that much of it, but yeah, who knows? Like a company as big as WWE perhaps might have other precautions. Yeah, I don't know.
Also coming up this weekend, we'll have a new post pro res with myself and WH Park. We're doing a dive into the history of Pro Wrestling Noah on their 20th anniversary this spring, and we will also be crowning the theme song contest winner on this Sunday show. So you can check out that coming up Sunday. All of the info for this week's shows are up at postwrestling.com.
What is the deadline for the contest, by the way?
Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Go to forum.postwrestling.com. The thread is there. You can submit your song. We asked it to be not too much more than 45 seconds. That's kind of the cap. Avoid any copywritten material in your submission. No flutes, no chimes per WH Park. And
recorders are okay?
Yes, we'll allow those. If it's okay for Kyrie, it's okay for us.
Got it. All right.
And if the Kabuki Warriors want to submit a theme, you've got till Thursday at 3. For them, I would extend it till 5 o'clock.
All right. Cool.
Okay. So there you go. Shall we dive into news?
Yeah, let's.
Okay. Well, we can start off just to wrap up everything from Double or Nothing over the weekend. They did do a post-show press conference, which I feel I should update everyone because everyone was listening to our post-show at the time, so this is all news to everybody. We did mention this on the show Saturday, but it is going to be Brian Cage challenging Jon Moxley at Fyter Fest. Date and location to be determined, which sounds like they're going to announce that this coming Wednesday. So that looks to be the next big title program. Tony Khan also mentioned during his media scrum that Brian Cage has been signed ever since January. This was when Steve Bryant at the SoCal Uncensored website reported that Cage had signed and was going to AEW, leaving Impact. And if you remember at the time, Melissa Santos came out and said and denied this. Well, Tony Khan confirmed he was signed. That was a true report. So Brian Cage he had to have the bicep surgery, and he's been getting paid this whole time since January. So a nice gesture by AEW that they very well could have said, well, once you're healed and cleared, then we'll sign you. But they did back in January. So, I mean, some peace of mind for Brian Cage that he was getting paid all this time.
Absolutely.
They announced All Out for September 5th. We're going to have, for Wednesday's Dynamite, Mike Tyson is going to be on the show. They're doing an Inner Circle pep rally. And we've got the Battle Royal for a future, or the TNT Championship match the following week, whoever will challenge Cody. And beyond that,
some injury updates were briefly alluded to. I believe he said Britt Baker should be a time frame of about like 2 months.
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks is the timetable there. So she's going to be on Dynamite Wednesday to address her injury. But it looks like they'll probably try and keep her, have some presence on television during this whole time. And I mean, 6 to 8 weeks, it's not great, but could have been way worse if this was, needed like full reconstructive surgery or something. And then you're looking the rest of the year she could have been out. So that, I would say, was good news coming out of, an injury situation.
And Phoenix's appears to be, certainly less severe than that, but they just decided to take him out of that match just as a precaution.
Yeah, he was limping around, Tony Khan said, and they made the call to take him out of the match. And Matt Jackson, I guess he hasn't gotten it fully diagnosed yet, but thinks it's a broken rib. So it's a rib injury.
It's insane that he had that injury while doing what he did in that match. Like the
have you never moonsaulted off a goalpost with a injured ribway? It's fine.
That is insane. And even like the locomotion suplexes, yes, I mean they did do many cutaways, but still the guy did like 10 at least. Like, that must have been brutal.
Yeah, it's almost like he went out of his way to negate this injury. Crazy. It was nuts. But yeah, that was the latest on him. And then also on Being the Elite today, this was a pretty lengthy episode, and they had a lot of footage of them shooting the stadium stampede, including, like, as impressive as the finish looks with that one-winged angel, the shot they have in Being the Elite is even more nuts. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, it's crazy. But the big notes, we had, first of all, in the opening scene, the Young Bucks dressed up in the Revival's pitched outfits that the WWE, they actually got these outfits designed just for this bit on Being the Elite, which was, I thought, pretty hysterical that they went to that length for the joke. And then in the closing minutes of the show, we got a cameo from Marty Scurll.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't catch it yet, but I did read your recap. Can you care to explain?
So they do the show ends with the graphic, and then it's the scene after the graphic where Hangman Page comes into the Young Bucks hotel room and they get into this huddle. And I guess the timeline was that this was supposed to be before the Stampede, Stadium Stampede. Yeah. So they're like huddling and going over stuff. Marty Scurll walks in saying, "I'm back, baby." And they're deep in thought discussing in this huddle, and they ignore him, and Marty Scurll just leaves, and they never notice that he walked in. So just leaving a tease there, and obviously doing something with Marty Scurll and how much this extends to AEW with ROH. I mean, that's, I guess, what the whole tease was designed to conjure up questions about, but a real interesting end to the show and doing something with Marty Scurll. I would almost say that it almost felt like that. It was one side of me is like, that would have been a really cool reveal to have done, maybe something bigger, but so much of it is just that reaction it would get, and you're not getting reactions these days. So maybe this was their best scenario. And who's to say what this means for AEW programming versus what happens on Being the Elite? Like, so far, we haven't seen the Revival teases extend to television. It's just been on Being the Elite. So we have kind of had that line as well between them.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it was just a case of like Marty being around and they're like, "Hey, you want to like make a cameo in this thing?" But certainly it tells you that I would say, now more than ever, the relationship between, I guess, the possibility of Ring of Honor and AEW potentially working together probably is higher than ever. So I guess it bodes well for that.
Some WWE news. Dave Meltzer had reported on Monday that Matt Riddle is expected to be moving to the main roster imminently. And I confirmed this myself as well, that it sounds like he's going to be, it'll be very soon that he's going to be moving to the main roster. He's got the match with Timothy Thatcher this Wednesday with the cage match with Kurt Angle as the referee. I don't know if that's it for Riddle, but given, you can look at the past few weeks. I mean, getting the tag titles off him, they're rushing this Timothy Thatcher feud. This Wednesday would be as logical an end for Matt Riddle if that's the destination, is getting him off of NXT. But what do you think this does for NXT? And conversely, where would you like to see Matt Riddle?
I think given, Matt Riddle's style and background, I would feel like he would be a specific call-up from Raw and Paul Heyman, who I think would do a tremendous job with him. I'm sure Heyman's just salivating at what he could potentially do with this guy. I see him making that jump. And what does it do to NXT? It's a big loss to NXT, but at the same time, you have a lot of people in NXT that are waiting to, jump into that spot. I'm most disappointed for Pete Dunne because it means that, he's not really going to get any sort of resolution with his teammate, and he'll have to find something else. Maybe he'll pick up the Timothy Thatcher program. But I think it's about time, honestly. Like, Riddle, how much more does he really have to achieve at NXT? He's already at a certain level. He's not a guy who really needs that championship run, in my opinion. And, he might be somebody who I think, under Paul Heyman can really I could see him doing really well.
Yeah, and regarding the tapings this week, the original schedule, it was going to be 2 Raws today, 2 SmackDowns tomorrow, but I heard late in the afternoon they did 1 Raw, 1 SmackDown today, and they'll do the same tomorrow. So I guess they just wanted to, they just split them up with 1 show for each brand on Monday and Tuesday, and then they're doing NXT on Wednesday. In Japan, they have lifted the state of emergency in several areas, including Tokyo. And I mean, I guess all eyes are on New Japan of what this means. If you remember what Harold May had said a couple of weeks ago, when they would start to even consider empty arena matches, one of the first things was that the state of emergency would have to be lifted, but also he had several other caveats, like the number of new infections would have to decline. They would have to have arenas that can be properly disinfected. And once those conditions were met, that's when they would start to look at empty arena shows. So at least one of those is kind of lifted right now, that they could run, a Cork and Hall, or if they feel that's a facility they can run confidently and feel it's as safe as you can manage at this point. But with the state of emergency lifted, do you think that we are closer to a New Japan, or do you think that they're going to be pretty reticent when it comes to empty arena shows, that it still may be a bit of a wait?
I think it means we'd be closer. I don't know if they know how long they would have to wait before they would have to, be able to allow audiences to come in. And at that point, even, what is that going to look like in terms of staggering in the crowds? What rules will be put into place in a venue such as Cork and Hall? And at that point, how long are you going to have to wait before you fill a bit more content for your roster that's been sitting out now for 4 months plus?
Yeah, they did their last show at the end of February, so March, April, May, we're 3 months that they have not done any shows.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They did kind of say a lot in those press conferences, and they kind of do have to back up and live up to those sentiments. But certainly something like this puts them a bit closer.
Yeah, and it seems, and certainly here in North America, it seems that most sports leagues are just all systems go behind finding ideas and trying to get things. You hear the NHL is talking about this 24-team playoff scenario that they're proposing. The NBA is looking at going to Disney to just have all of their games take place in this. And
having the players live there.
Having the players live there as well. So it's you're starting to see most sports leagues all kind of formulating their plans and just seem to be going with this. You hope that all of this, as much as there's the talk of a second wave in the fall, what that could create for all of this. Because I can't fathom that there will be this level of restrictions if there's a second wave, that people are going to go through this again. But I have no idea what that would look like. But you just hear so much about that potential in the fall or maybe later, that I think most are not even trying to think about that. They have to, but trying to just hope for the best at this point, because they're inching towards reopening so much at the moment.
Yeah. All this stuff is, constantly changing. I just really hope that numbers start to really go down and people, it's this
which they're not here. They're not in our province.
No, this whole thing has been, trying to strike a balance between what's safe and what is healthy for what's healthy for the population and what's healthy for the economy. And I'm sure there's some middle ground that, you can do your best to try to find to at least make most people happy. But that's going to be, it's going to take a lot of experimentation to find. And that's the stage that I think we're at.
Last thing here are just 2 MMA stories. So the UFC, they're planning for their card this Saturday in Las Vegas. And it seems like they're very confident this will be happening in Las Vegas. And they put out this memo over the weekend that MMA Junkie got a hold of, and they're increasing their COVID-19 testing. So the new procedures that they're going to have is that fighters, cornermen, those associated, they're going to be tested twice with those swab tests, which absolutely number one is I'd be retiring at this point. I would be Henry Cejudo. I would be out of here. Those swab tests, I can't tell you. Like, that to me has been the greatest, I won't say the biggest deterrent for everything, but that's a pretty high one for me.
Well,
like, I don't ever want to have to go through one of those, and I feel at some point I'll have to, but man, am I frightened of taking that thing.
Well, that's the thing. In our province now, they're starting to recommend that everybody, whether or not you're symptomatic, should be taking a test. And this is, I do believe in the future, really, it's the only way that we'll be able to eliminate this whole thing, is to like do our best to track everybody. So, you know, you and I, John, could walk down to the clinic tomorrow and take it. We could do that now. We don't have to have like a note or anything like that.
We would have to record it.
Oh yeah.
I'm not doing this for nothing. I'm getting all my bang for my buck out of that thing. Cause dude, I might scream though. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a screamer, but that thing is just, oh man. Like your fiance must have had to, like, she must have had this several times, I'm guessing.
Done it 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it like any easier by the 4th time than the first?
I mean, I don't know. I would assume so. I think she's just really described it as uncomfortable, but yeah, listen, what the alternative is worse, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, getting back to this. So when they arrive there, they get this swab test, and then they have to go self-isolate. And they've now defined self-isolating, meaning you go to your hotel room, you can't leave the hotel, and you're only to have contact with your fight camp until you get the results of that test. And if it comes back positive, you have to stay in your hotel room until you get the instructions. Then you get a second swab test right after the weigh-ins. And again, you go back to your hotel room until the results come in. They are not even opening up the Performance Institute for everybody. That is closed. And so, you know, what they did, which, I mean, they did a lot for the Jacksonville shows, but you saw the holes. And this is certainly an ability to rectify it. And you hate to ever say that there was any good out of someone testing positive, but with Jacare, I mean, they did learn from that, and they are doing much more, which, had that not happened, maybe they would not have. And I'm curious to see if, the broadcast, do we see anything different this weekend in terms of more masks, of not doing the in-octagon interviews? Is there anything else that they might adjust from that side of things that also came under some criticism?
I'm happy to hear the adjustment. You know, anything I think to, you know, increase the chances of safety for everybody is a good thing. And yeah, maybe that is the silver lining to all this stuff is, you know, this, like I said, this is a continued experiment, and Jacksonville is the petri dish, unfortunately. So, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And, you know, at the very least, I'm really happy to see them make adjustments accordingly.
When is the Mike Tyson video of him getting the swab test going to appear online? There's no way that wasn't filmed.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. Are you allowed to film that stuff?
A bunch of the fighters film their stuff when, I saw a bunch of them that week of the UFC cards.
Oh,
I don't know. To be honest, if the person administering it is at all camera shy or anything, I wouldn't want that pressure on them. Be like, let's just focus on sticking this 6-inch thing up my nose and let's turn the cameras off, maybe. Mm-hmm. The last thing here is Henry Cejudo.
Sorry. On that note, though, do you know if they're doing swab testing in AEW?
I was under the impression, they were, because in Jacksonville, you had to be doing it.
For AEW or UFC?
For both of them, because in Jacksonville, they were, one of the representatives of the city was saying that it was going to be mandatory. So I'm pretty sure AEW was doing the swab testing.
Gotcha. And do you know anything of WWE? Because they did say today that they were testing.
Yeah, they said on the broadcast that the people in the crowd had been tested. I don't know 100% what that meant. If there was actually, at this point, you would hope that they are doing the testing, because it just seems
I don't think they would come out and say that they're tested, and if all they did was check temperature.
I don't think so either. Yeah. So I would be I would assume that means the actual testing and not just temperature checks, because that at this point in time would sound misleading.
Right.
And yeah, the last thing here, Henry Cejudo. So he had announced his retirement after the Dominic Cruz fight at UFC 249. He has now vacated the bantamweight title, stripped of the title, whatever definition you want to go with. And he just put out a statement, just doubling down that he's retired, he's out. And so the once double champion ended up not losing either the flyweight or bantamweight title. He ended up vacating each title, and he is maintaining that he's done. We will see if this is actually the end of his career or not, but they are moving on in the bantamweight division without Henry Cejudo. So that is the latest that is happening in the world of pro wrestling and mixed martial arts as we shift over to Raw with our crowd. And let's talk a bit about just the setup here. So we had numerous NXT trainees that were spread out throughout the Performance Center. We saw the likes of Shotzi Blackheart, Kaden Carter, Simone Johnson, The Rock's daughter, Aaliyah, Jessamine Duke, Malcolm Bivens, Xia Li, Casey Catanzaro. Yeah. They were all spread out.
But none of the major stars.
No. These were
nobody
mostly trainees and a few that you would have seen on TV, like Shotzi and Aaliyah, Kaden Carter.
Yeah, like of that crop, I feel like I would say somebody like Shotzi would almost be like the upper tier of like, star power that you would have. And I certainly feel like doing something like this, I'm sure they were conscious of like not making your actual stars feel like they're just fans.
Oh yeah, like you couldn't put Adam Cole in there. I think they're very conscious of that. Whereas in AEW, it's kind of the mid-tier to lower tier, I would say. Like, kind of your highest ones you put out there are who, like, Colt Cabana, MJF. So, not your bottom tier guys for sure. But beyond, like, the students and such, it's kind of a similar level.
Although, like, I think we've seen in AEW, I don't know if there's too much harm because it allows them to, like, play their characters. I mean, MJF was in the crowd. Yep. So it really allows them to play their characters as they're watching these matches. But instead, I would say this NXT, Performance Center crowd was there more so to play like a generic audience.
So we also had Tom Phillips mentioned off the top that they have all been tested. They're practicing social distancing and are 6 feet apart. And some were 6 feet apart, but anyway.
Mm-hmm. They certainly weren't side by side. Like
no, they were not close to each other. They weren't like high-fiving and stuff. They weren't Billy and Austin Gunn out there. And then they also put up these walls of plexiglass all throughout to block the trainees from the performers. And this, to me, was an extra step on top of... we haven't seen this in any other wrestling settings during this time.
I really like all the changes, and yeah, like this whole thing is like, a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, look, they copied AEW again, blah blah blah. Like, who gives a shit? They should be congratulated for like like not worrying about that anymore, and just like doing what is best for the product. Everybody should learn from each other. Like AEW, okay, like they got a Titantron. Are they copying somebody because they did a Titantron? Like, who cares? We should all be collectively like thinking, what is the best solution to this problem that we're all suffering from? And I'm really glad to see WWE finally do something like this. I guess I don't know if they had any sort of like code or some sort of like doctor's referral before they could do something like this. But I like you said, John, I thought they went a step further than AEW by separating people from standing next to each other. Putting the glass around the ring, which I think is actually a cool look, and looks way more. To me, it seems like it's a more professionally kind of conscious way of like holding a sporting event, and I think it might even set a template for other sports leagues that may find themselves doing the same thing. Mm-hmm.
I thought that this certainly was an improvement over, the dead atmosphere that we have had for past WWE shows. You did have that sound. It didn't sound contrived. It sounded like you were almost watching it. Maybe it was just because of the plexiglass that I had it on my mind, but it felt like watching like a small town hockey game or something where it's not a big crowd there, but they are making some noise and adding a bit to it. So I like this adjustment. I thought it was probably, if you're going to put people in, you have all people Florida based. It's not like you're getting people to travel far to come here. and, provided they're doing all the requisite testing necessary. And I thought that this was a strong idea to do this.
It was a huge improvement for me for the overall quality of the show. I mean, I would say like they probably even had more people there. I mean, I can't really like give a figure, but at least like the earlier AEW shows, like in Atlanta, I definitely feel like they had more people here than those shows. I don't know if they would have had more than like at Daly's Place this past weekend or not, but it's comparable, and especially like in a building smaller that's enclosed, like performance center, the sound definitely comes across. Now, I did bring up earlier about how personality of the crowd, I suppose it might be another thing. Like I discussed, you have within AEW. People that are actually playing their own characters within the crowd, and every crowd member kind of felt distinct. This was more so just, everybody being a generic audience member.
Right before we go into this, I just want to add this note. This came from Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful that Drew Gulak is working this week's SmackDown taping, and that's something I had heard earlier in the afternoon. So Sean Ross Sapp confirmed that. So that's something to note for this week, to expect Drew Gulak on SmackDown.
Interesting. Okay.
So
we'll find more about that, I'm sure, later. Also, Memorial Day video again off the top. So happy Memorial Day to all our American friends. Yeah.
Really nice tribute video here at the beginning of the show. And worth noting here, maybe it's, not news to anyone else, but I would say at this point, it sounds like Jerry Lawler is probably out as Raw announcer and Samoa Joe is in.
I honestly think it's an improvement. I'm sorry, Jerry Lawler I really respect, but I don't think he was fit for this role. He's admittedly somebody who doesn't keep up to date with what's going on. Samoa Joe, I would say Samoa Joe I would say is not necessarily good or bad in this role. He's just, I would say, inoffensive, and he fulfills a role. Like, he has not stood out to me, honestly, in this run at all. And I think in comparison, that could be a good thing, because certainly you don't get, your Akira Tozawa instances of embarrassment like that. But it's not like Joe, to me, like, is there to really stand out either.
Yeah. And do you feel that this will be Joe's role? Do you think his in-ring days are over? Or is this his main role now?
I don't think so. I mean, there's really nothing that seems to indicate that that they would go that way. Like, his injury was not that severe, was it?
I mean, he was dealing with like a concussion, so it's like you never know when it comes to those kinds of injuries. I would just say at this point, it would be one thing if Joe was like a Florida guy and it was convenient for him to be doing these. It's like, he's in California. So it's like, if they're going to that length now and bringing him here, it would tell me like this is probably where they have him slotted. I mean, and I think he's been great in this role. So I guess that's just the next question is what is the state of his in-ring future? Do they see him just as an announcer? Do they see him as someone that can wrestle the occasional match? Or is this going to be temporary and eventually he'll be, because I mean, they are low on names that are out there. If Joe is coming to these tapings, you would think that they would want him in the ring.
Perhaps, or it could be like his last commentary run where they're just kind of waiting for the right moment to transfer him back.
We also had the return of matches interrupted with commercial breaks. So the 1 week formula was done.
There were still like short matches, though.
Also very few matches. We had 5 matches on the show.
Okay.
Not a crazy number for a 3-hour show. It started with the Kevin Owens show, and later tonight, Owens will be taking on Angel Garza, and his guest is Asuka, who comes out chanting for Becky. Asuka was one of the stars of tonight's show.
She was, yeah. The star to me, though, or the MVP rather, was to come.
We recap Nia Jax attacking Asuka and then Asuka laying her out last week. And then we got the procession of the women involved in the number 1 contenders match. Charlotte comes out. Natalya comes out. And I thought this was hysterical. As soon as Natalya walks out, Owens starts taking down all the set pieces. And she apologizes to the KO Show crew for her temper tantrum last week. Nia Jax comes out. She said she's going to bulldoze Asuka at Backlash and reminds her of what she did to Kairi Sane. And Asuka nails her with a spinning back fist. All the women fight. And that was the end of our first segment, with the number one contenders match to come later on.
Just like last week, they're having Asuka continually get the better of Nia physically in each of their altercations. It's always Asuka like striking first, or at least like getting the upper hand. And I think continues to be like a refreshing, different tactic for them to push a babyface with, a smaller size babyface at that. And I really like it. It shows off Asuka's intensity really well.
Kayla interviewed Apollo Crews, who called tonight the greatest night of his professional career because he's going to become United States champion.
Okay, yeah.
They're just throwing out that greatest term like it's just nothing.
At least in this case, you can buy it. You know? Like, it's his first championship. Okay, that makes sense. But, like, greatest wrestling match ever, that's a bit much.
I mean, do you know what the theme song is for Backlash?
Something with the greatest.
It is Panic at the Disco, the greatest show.
Okay, right.
They just looked up greatest and found a 2018 song that matched what they were going for. Andrade, Apollo Crews for the United States title, the greatest night of Apollo's life. Angel Garza was watching backstage, and this led to the most bizarre cutaway interview in recent memory, as Kayla Braxton asked Garza what he thought, and as we're watching the match in the background, Garza compared this match to having sex. It's like making love to a beautiful woman. First, you make eye contact, which sends a message. Then there's two bodies coming together, crashing against each other. The tension builds, followed by exhausted bliss. And when it's over, it's time to do it all over again. And then we cut back to Andrade and Apollo Crews in mid bliss.
Yeah.
What the hell was this?
I have no idea. Like, this just kept going on and on and on so long that, like, they had to cut back to the ring for a near fall because the guy was going on for so long. I don't know if he was supposed to talk that long or what. He sounded creepy as fuck here. Like, it's totally pervert vibes. I don't think that's what they're going for.
That's totally how this came off at. Like, you didn't even have, like, Kayla Braxton, like, blushing or anything. She was, like, creeped out here. And then we got the double knees from Andrade. Crews comes back, stops him with an enziguri, hits the press slam, standing moonsault, standing shooting star, and pins Andrade. 8 minutes, 23 seconds, and Apollo Crews is your United States champion.
Good match, yeah. To be honest, though, I was really like finding myself distracted by seeing a crowd again on Raw. To be able to really like follow every single thing, but I mean.
These two are they're exhibitionists here with a crowd.
I guess so, but I thought the presentation, like with the audience there, to me, it was still sinking in for me as I was watching this, and I thought it was really great.
Charlie interviewed him inside the ring, and she asked him how he felt, and he said, "People told me I couldn't do this, but I never gave up after 11 years, and it felt so good." And backstage, Andrade is just destroying shit.
Yeah, I think Crews, like, in ring, he's always been fantastic, but, like, on the microphone these past several weeks, at least, maybe it's because he's been given the opportunity and has actually been given a character and a storyline, but to me, his personality has really come out in recent weeks, and I would say now more than ever, he feels like he's coming across as a complete package.
Yep. I was just waiting for him to tie everything together by holding up the title saying, "You never forget your first time."
Oh, God. Wow. Yeah.
Seth was in the back with a Rey Mysterio mask, and he said that he is better than he's ever been because of Mysterio. Seth was in a dark place 2 weeks ago, and Rey presented himself to be sacrificed and brought up Dominic being at home and not there for his father. He doesn't know if Rey's future will continue here in WWE, and if it is his final act, it was a courageous one for all of us to move into the future. This prompts Murphy and Austin Theory to walk into the shot. They know what it's like to be underappreciated, and Murphy needed a mentor and a leader like Rollins. Theory thought he had friends, but they abandoned him. Seth found him, and he will make they will make examples of Umberto Carrillo and Alistair Black later tonight. And I've got to say, Austin Theory, remarkable man of forgiveness that has just moved on from this betrayal last week by Andrade and Angel Garza.
Must have been quite the week of reprogramming for this guy. Feels like he's lived a month in the span of 6 days.
Yeah, well, he's just moving on to the next thing. He's like, you know what, I could spend my time feuding with these guys for the next 3 months, but why? I'm moving on. So that's it. That was our big breakup. I
like the stable of the three a lot, but man, it's just, I think you've heard us talk about it ad nauseum. The cult gimmick is just so generic and dull. They're like the Dark Order, but without the mask.
Yeah, I don't feel anything towards this group at the moment. We'll see if that changes. They have got some heat with this eye injury angle, and we'll get into it later. That I think that's been the best stuff Seth has done in this character. And if Rey Mysterio, in fact, is the program next week, they're advertising the Rey Mysterio retirement ceremony next week.
Yeah,
that is what they have on tap. So we'll see whatever Rey's future is. He has a deal that's coming due, and it's been explained. If he resigns, then this is the program, and if he doesn't, then that's the write-off. So, they're pushing it hard. So, for Seth's sake, hopefully Rey's coming back.
I would think so. I don't think they would give him this amount of airtime if they don't intend on doing a match, right?
Especially invoking Dominic here. It seems like they are fully moving ahead with this, but it also wouldn't shock me that they're pushing this without knowing that they've got Rey either. So we'll see. Hopefully next Monday we'll have an answer to that. Charlie was with Charlotte, and she's just giving her same promo about raising the bar when Asuka walked in carrying her title and tells her that red is not your color.
How is it that Asuka cut a more memorable promo than Charlotte?
Because she came across much more charismatic in this moment, whereas Charlotte has said this promo about 12.5 times.
Yeah, I guess with Asuka, you never know what kind of speech or anything you're gonna get. But Asuka, but I guess Charlotte at this point, unfortunately, it does come across a little robotic.
The Iconics walked out, and Peyton Royce apologized for costing them the titles last week. Billy apologized for getting upset and doesn't want to have any animosity between them. They grew up together. They signed their contracts together. They won titles at WrestleMania together, and they should be the women's tag team champions. It was interesting that I don't think they even replayed the angle from last week where Billy slapped her, and right. It almost felt like, do you want that in the back of people's mind that there's still this friction between them, or are we just moving on from that? Because they didn't put any kind of emphasis on the slap last week.
I sense it more as a slow burn, like what they're doing with Bayley and Sasha, where, there's this initial burst of tension and then they cool down, and then somewhere in the background, they'll surprise you again with it.
Alexa and Nikki Cross came out with the Iconics referring to Alexa as the office's favorite blonde. And this led to Nikki cutting the most passionate promo she's done on WWE television, that the Iconics shut her down by saying, "You don't get to talk, just look grateful." And Cross tells her about leaving Scotland with nothing. She knew nobody. And then Lexi came along and gave her that respect. And Cross has taught her about friendship in return, and there's nothing more iconic than that. And then they get into this big fight with the champions getting laid out with a spin kick to Cross and Alexa going shoulder first into the post before they hit their version of the Magic Killer onto Nikki Cross and laid them out. This was the most serious Iconic segment that they have done, and a pretty passionate promo from Cross.
Seems like they're building to a rubber match again between these two.
What sport? Curling? What could they play to break this tie?
Like a sport involving rubber. I don't know. Anyway.
What about ping pong? They could play doubles.
Rubber?
got
on the paddle. Okay. I thought it was a successful, I think, pretty compelling segment to build to another match in this program. Nikki cut a passionate promo.
MVP was backstage, and Lana's there staring at him and said, "We need to talk." And MVP just says, "No, we don't." And he walks away. I thought this was really funny.
I thought it was awesome.
It was just such a simple little segment that you wouldn't necessarily think up. And it was just a great response. I love this. I hate when I am told, I'd like to talk or something. It's like, no, I have an option here and I'm taking the door outside.
He just hit the mute button.
Exactly. He hit the mute button. I love this. Babyface MVP. They put up a graphic here for Shad Gaspard, and we went to the VIP lounge with MVP inside the ring. And he welcomed all the NXT trainees that are here in attendance. Drew comes out, and he goes all Natalya here on poor MVP's set. He's asking where Lashley is. Is he hiding under the ring? Is he going to jump him? And MVP reminded him of a rule. No contract, no contact. Meaning, we need a contract signing.
Of course we do.
How else is this match going to happen? He says that Lashley will not put the full Nelson on him until Backlash, and reminds Drew of the last time the two of them were here on the VIP lounge. And you hit me with the Claymore kick. And Drew responds, "You can just say Claymore. It's clearly a kick." Which is something that I am sure was because there was a clear adjustment when that went from the Claymore kick to just the Claymore. It's like what, as soon as Vince McMahon started paying attention to this guy, God damn it! Everyone knows it's a kick. It's just the Claymore.
Do you think this was intentionally an exchange that was written in, or do you feel like?
No, I thought this was Drew ad-libbing with him.
Yeah, and I thought MVP came back really well with it
because he wouldn't back down. He kept calling it a kick.
Yes, he emphasized when he repeated it again. He emphasized the word "kick" in there. So I mean, this segment I thought felt really good and really, really real because you had that little bit of back and forth between two people who evidently are, I think, really good at least, or are comfortable with improv.
MVP said, "When you hit me with the Claymore kick, what I realized laying there was that you were going to win the WWE title, but when you lost that title, I would personally play a role in that outcome." So this has been brewing since January during that segment. He said that Lashley has waited 13 years to get another title shot. Drew doesn't need anyone thinking or talking for him, referring to MVP, or kissing his ass. And the only way Lashley is going to take his title is by prying it from his cold, dead hands, which MVP says can be arranged. And then Lashley is out, and MVP gets hit with the Claymore kick, and then Lashley takes him to the floor, MVP to the floor, and Drew is challenging him to fight, but Lashley won't engage.
I really like the segment. Great promos from MVP. I thought a really logical motivation for him to work with Lashley. He's got a personal grudge against Drew after what happened, I guess, way back then. And he wants to personally see to it that somebody can defeat this guy and take the belt off of him. He said it really good. Drew said it really good. Crowd being there, again, really helped. Segment like this. I really like the package of MVP with Lashley. And for the first time, I feel like Drew actually has a pretty, decently hot, a little personal now of a feud with a really strong contender.
Don't you think it would have been a bit better, though, when he used the kissing my ass line if Lashley had just been there so he could turn around and bend over?
It's what was going through my mind the whole time. Yeah, that would have just made this thing next level.
Oh, would have had so much heat.
Yeah.
Charlie is with Natalya, and right in the middle of her promo, she gets a phone call, and it's TJ. And Natalya explains she apologized for destroying Owen's set, and there's nothing more she can do. She's got to focus on her match. So she goes back to Charlie, who informs her, "We're all out of time." And Natalya is annoyed. And then Samoa Joe just calls this unprofessional. I'm really enjoying Samoa Joe with Natalya. I thought this was a pretty great line from Samoa Joe. And
is that the program?
Oh, this has to be what's building to Joe versus Natalya. Definitely.
I would watch that. I think they would have a great match.
So what's the story here? The story is that TJ doesn't watch Raw, so he didn't see the apology. and then was reminding Natalya to apologize. Like, TJ was so upset last week that Kevin Owens' makeshift set got destroyed by Natalya, that he was adamant that she apologized for this, and not only didn't catch the segment earlier, but then calls her when she's on live television.
Well, maybe we know that this wasn't live, and this was a tape show. Was it taped? Was it like tape delayed?
I don't know when they taped it. I would imagine like they had to do
Raw on the same time zone as we are. So they, if they were taping another show after 11 p.m., that'd be really late.
I mean, to me, if you had the whole day, like, I would think you would use like the day to tape that and not do it at night, but I don't know for sure.
So that explains it. TJ, how would he have known? He couldn't have seen it.
Okay. So it was live to tape, and he didn't know it was happening. That's actually a really good explanation.
It doesn't really explain why Charlie would say that they're out of time, though, if this is a tape show.
Yeah, wouldn't we would just do a second take.
See, in the history of wrestling backstage interviews, this has never happened, right? No one's ever said, we're out of time and we can't talk to you at all. I guess it has.
We gotta go.
Yeah, I guess it has happened, but, she didn't even, I guess no one's ever picked up a phone call and spoken on the phone the whole way through their interview time.
Yeah, I mean, what are you supposed to do if you get a phone call right in the middle of like doing something that is like being taped and live? I mean, you would just
if you got a phone call right now during this podcast, I mean, I'm sure you would take it, and then I would, just say we were out of time. Like go to another website to get your Raw recap.
Okay. I was calling Wai during this time, but he clearly doesn't have his phone with him.
Well, I'm a professional. I have my phone on silent, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. I was starting to worry that maybe it was like in another room and I didn't want to wake anyone up because...
No, it would have been a funny bit.
Then I would have to apologize next week. All right. So that was the end of this segment. We never found out what Natalya had on her mind. Kevin Owens is making his entrance, and Angel Garza runs down, chop blocks the knee as we go to break. They plugged for SmackDown this week the semifinals of the tournament, the IC title tournament, with Elias versus AJ Styles and Jeff Hardy versus Daniel Bryan. Owens is he's going to Matt Jackson his way through. How could this guy not go through with this match after what Matt Jackson did on Saturday? So the match begins, and Garza just goes after the knee until Owens hits a DDT, but then as he sets up for the cannonball, the knee gives out, and it allows Garza to super kick him. Then Garza is knocked off the top when Owens gets another burst, lands the senton, but can't do the pop-up powerbomb. Again, the knee goes out, and he gets hit with the wing clipper. Garza wins in 3:31. I always like when an injury prevents you from your offense, which so often we see an injury, and knees are the worst for them, where all of a sudden the guy's got to still hit all of his springboards and stuff. So this was short, but it was a good for a while it lasted.
It was high intensity from the jump, and again, like this type of match, the crowd really helped. If this was just a silent beatdown and you didn't have that sort of like panic, or at least a reaction of it. Like Kevin Owens in this match was supposed to be like panicking. Oh shit, like he hit me from the back. I don't have a leg. How do I carry on? Having a crowd there definitely helps. It's a match like he had to definitely like put attention to the knee because that was what was going to protect him and really help build to a rematch here. So it's an easy to digest story that creates a grudge leading into another match between these two, and it's really good to see somebody from Zelina's faction actually getting a win.
I was shocked. The streak ended.
I guess her faction only consists of these two now.
Yeah, I mean they got rid of maybe they got rid of the wrong person. Like maybe Andrade is the deadweight.
Maybe.
Then we got an entire video package dedicated to the history of the Street Profits and Viking Raiders doing their knockoff Olympics. Some poor sap had to put this whole thing together, go through the best moments of basketball and axe throwing. Next up, I kid you not, is golf. So we're on the greens. Eric throws his club towards the hole. The deal is the Viking Raiders are awful at golf. They're uncultured. They don't know how to play. They're just these unconventional athletes. The Street Profits are destroying them. Ford does a trick shot, bouncing the ball off the trees and the cart. Vikings end up hitting this other golfer, so they get thrown off the green. And then instead, they go to play mini golf. And the woman is about to throw them off the mini golf course, but notes that Ivar is cute, Eric isn't, so that's our running gag. And at the end of mini golf, the score is 144-28. The Viking Raiders think they won. And in case the joke was not going to connect with you, thankfully, the Viking Raiders were there to yell, high score wins. And they explain that in golf, the lower score wins. And therefore, the Street Profits are up 2-1 in the series. And we ended with Ivar pulling out a wallet, a red cup, and a turkey leg from one of the holes, and then stared down this alligator.
Yeah. You know, like earlier, I think segments from these two, there's a certain novelty, and I definitely appreciated anything that took place outside of that, like, really dead, empty arena. I think 2 was my limit, because I thought this was fucking awful. This was probably just as awful as any of them, but like to be given this one, and what made this one a little different was it felt like, you know, if you remember last week, those segments were littered throughout the show, spaced out apart. This one felt like they had even more stuff, but instead they just crammed it all into they crammed like 3 hours worth of vignettes into 3 minutes, and as a result, it was like hyper. Edited.
Please give us the uncut 3-hour version.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Instead, like I'm saying, it felt like something that probably in shorter bursts might have been, I don't know, a little bit better. But instead, like cramming everything into this, you force them to like edit it into like almost like an MTV Crib style type of thing, and it just like the punchline, the jokes were bad to begin with. But like they didn't have really any room to, I think, even attempt to land. I don't know. I mean, somebody must, you know, really get a kick out of these. But the jokes are just terrible.
I think that's the worst part, is that the Viking Raiders are funny in these, like, just from the physical like comedy that they bring to these segments. The Street Profits are the Street Profits. Like they can be,
the personality is amazing. They're all off
like
the chart.
It's not to me the personalities, but you're right. The jokes and these kinds of segments, I really believe if you sat down, you could come up with some great one-liners and make these funny segments. You have to hit like 5 beats in one of these to just hit, and I think that they don't hit any of them. It's comedy that really is not there, and that's what kind of leads these to not be any kind of memorable segment that you might go back and, you know, find some comedy in. They're just kind of like, it's the sight gag of, here are these guys playing golf badly.
Yeah.
Lashley is with MVP. Lana is there, and this is after MVP has taken the Claymore. And Lana calls Drew a monster and hands over some ice. She's trying to make nice with them. And MVP says that was a message designed for Lashley, and they need to send a message back to him, and they leave without Lana, and she screams.
So the story so far is Lana trying to, like, I don't know, get back in with Lashley, and MVP is just repeatedly brushing her aside, focused on, I guess, the job. It's interesting. I'm curious to see where it all ends up, because certainly, like, you know, Lana is now having to find a way back in. I'm sure she'll make a big impact somehow.
Murphy and Austin Theory versus Umberto Carrillo and Alistair Black. Seth was in the corner holding up Ray's mask. The heels go to the floor, and Black did his backflip into the seated position. Carrillo then goes to the top, high cross onto both men. And then we had, I thought Black and Theory in particular just had a great sequence that Theory just fed for all his kicks. Joe called one of them what they call a Dutch hug. Black then takes out both of them and sends a Murphy elbow into Theory. Then Theory missed and nails Murphy. And they did this, and it didn't look like contrived or goofy either. Like, it was just going at like 1,000,000 miles per minute here. And I thought Alistair Black got to really shine here for the time they had. There's plenty of strikes here with Theory. He goes down. Black gets shoved to the floor as Theory got out of the way of a Carrillo moonsault. And then as he's dealing with Murphy on the apron, it's who was it here? It was Carrillo who gets caught with the ATL, and Austin Theory pins Carrillo 4 minutes, 20 seconds.
really fast pace. Yeah, like this to me was almost them like thinking about what might have worked with them trying like to do 3-minute matches all week long and keeping that format for the matches that, you know, would benefit, I think, from a shorter amount of time. And they just crammed everything they needed to in this one and saved a lot of time for the post-match angle.
Black then got tossed into the timekeeper's area, and they threatened to take out Carrillo's eye. They have him set up by the steps, and Black's got a chair in the ring, and they threaten if Black takes one step, he loses his eye. And Ray was sacrificed for the greater good, and if Black doesn't back off, then that sacrifice was for nothing. And Black drops the chair, and they end up letting Carrillo go, and Black comes to his aid.
I thought the scenario was well done. I like the standoff, you know, between the two with Rollins threatening to injure Carrillo's eye and Black basically, you know, having to put down the gun.
That's where this needs to escalate to.
But like Rollins talking about the sacrifice bullshit just takes me right out of it. It just, oh man, it's just the gimmick.
How do you not, like, you're the Messiah? That's your nickname.
Oh my God.
How do you not, like, work in some, unless they want to, like, actively avoid, like, religion and stuff, like, there's an easy promo there with, like, an Alistair Black character.
Yeah, I see. I kind of want them to like, just get away from all that stuff.
They're not. Like, that's the whole focus of it, like, that they're going towards. I think the eye thing was clearly like the best thing that they have done. So you had, I thought they were still going to like attack this guy, but I mean, the thing with the eye is you do that angle, you can't bring this guy back anytime soon. And if this is something that ultimately writes out Ray, you can't just do it nonchalant. It's like the punt. You've got to sell the effects of it.
Yeah.
Then we had Edge in a room all by himself. He said that Orton caught him tongue-tied a few weeks ago with the challenge, and now here he is, doubting his ability, if he can hang with Randy Orton. Edge says, I had been retired for 3,212 days, and during that time, Randy has had 1,126 matches, according to Cage Match.
Is that it? How did he count?
How, like, and imagine this person, this character of Edge, sitting down and counting this. Like, why?
Well, I would imagine I would hope that he would, in storyline, call a WWE statistician, Dana Brooke. He'd call Dana Brooke and ask,
hey, how many Chris Harrington or someone.
Sure, yeah.
He thanks Orton for making him contemplate things he had not thought of. And he turns it into the Last Ride series and how he was interviewed for that at the time he was retired. And now he understands what The Undertaker is going through and trying to hang up the boots and go off into the sunset. He understands, but says he had hung with the likes of The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, Mysterio, Christian, Regal. He even mentions Owen Hart, Davey Boy Smith. He would adapt to any style and pull people up to his level and would teach guys how to get to the next level, considering himself a 5-tool workhorse for this company. But he says everything that I've just said is in the past tense because I don't know if I can do any one of those things anymore. But at Backlash, I'm going to dig to the depths of my soul to try.
Dig into the depths of my soul to try, yeah. Because it's all an old man can do, is what he says.
Is there a larger disconnect than the motivation of this match for the Edge character and the tagline they have put on this thing?
Oh, completely. Like
it doesn't even fit with the story at all. It's this guy questioning if he still has it. And they're promoting, this is the greatest of all time. 2 peak performers at the prime of their careers coming together in this dream scenario. It doesn't even make sense.
You can absolutely tell that the performers themselves want absolutely nothing to do with whatever this tagline has been forced onto them.
Very notable how Edge omitted it, and everyone else that has to plug this, from Flair to Joe to Tom Phillip, everyone else has to use it, and Edge did not in this one. I think that's very notable.
The tagline comes from somebody either with complete, like, just, who's completely out of touch with, I think, what the audience expects out of this match, and or somebody who's just not taking it seriously at all and might be even ribbing these guys for all I know. And Edge and Orton are clearly two people that are taking this incredibly seriously. Edge in particular here, like he was fantastic. I thought lots of, you can definitely tell like he wants to use these TV appearances now during this current run to really flex his new acting chops on TV. And he's given himself a storyline where he is now playing the role of Mark Calloway from The Last Ride, a veteran who is unsure if he has what it takes to live up to his legacy. And while it is sort of unfortunately dismissive of that Mania match, which he won, I can forgive it because it's allowing Edge to like get really deep into this, character that's full of, I think, complexity that he's trying to create for himself. But of course, the only thing would have been better if he could have assured me that this was not just going to be a good wrestling match, but the greatest wrestling match ever.
Will it be... Like, obviously, Edge is going to do interviews the week of Backlash, and he'll probably do the next cycle of a match. Is he going to openly criticize this tagline before the Backlash match, or will he do it several months from now?
That's a really good question. That's almost something worth taking a bet on. I mean, you would expect somebody like Edge, and especially Orton, to like have the leeway to just, be able to speak their mind.
See, I feel Randy Orton would double down in an interview and say, "You don't think it will be?"
True, right.
I feel like Sid that time, Mouth interviewed him. Sid was talking about coming back at a WrestleMania, and Mouth just like responded like, yeah, you're going to come back at WrestleMania?
Yeah.
He's like, what? You don't think I can't do it?
Yeah, I can definitely see some sort of veiled like, oh yeah, it's going to be like, sarcastic comment, but I don't know. I have no idea. I can't wait for the podcast to come out about the truth about this whole thing.
Why did they put that pressure on us? It was ridiculous. Like, there was a moment tonight when Joe has to say it, and he just looks over at Tom, and he's got like the smirk on his face as he says it, like just like, what a stupid idea.
Oh, God.
Anyway, I'm entertained by it, to be honest. Like, I don't care at all. I just get an amusement out of them having to push like such a grandiose tagline.
So listen, that it would be great. That would be a great reaction if it was like Elias versus R-Truth or something like that. This is a match that these two are taking very seriously, and they're presenting a very serious story.
Oh, it's a disservice to them. 100%. Like it doesn't fit this at all, the tone of it.
The first thing you think about when you see that poster is comedy. That's absolutely terrible.
Asuka joins commentary for the next match, but then the Profits and Vikings meet backstage. They tell the Profits they will let them win in golf just like basketball, so they have to pick another challenge. And I'm just thinking here, it's like, okay, this is where we set up the Backlash match. No, they're going bowling next week. I could not even believe that they are extending this again.
Oh, yeah. This did not feel like a culmination at all. I think we're going to go at least up to 5.
Hey, okay, this is the time. Are all the trainees ready? All of you guys ready for the big reaction? Next week's bowling segment? Spare me.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Is that the title? The next week's podcast?
That's next week's, yeah. We're booking ahead.
Got it.
MVP walks in and calls them a bunch of clowns, wasting away, sending their talent down the drain, who'd rather play golf than be champions. They don't respect them, and then this sets up a tag match for later. The Profits versus MVP and Lashley.
Yep.
Charlotte, Natalya, Nia Jax, #1 contenders match for the Raw Women's title. I won't say stunned, surprised that Shayna Baszler's name was not even mentioned. Her win was not mentioned from last week, and there was no involvement here. I thought at the very least Shayna would get involved here with Natalya or something, but it was like Shayna Baszler does not exist here. I don't know why that submission match happened last week. It made no sense when this thing was over.
I mean, clearly they want to tell some sort of losing streak story with Natalya, and this was just another week of them getting there. But yeah, it absolutely completely disregards why Natalya would be in a number one contenders match while Shayna isn't. So unfortunately, it was just a case of just the missing logic, I would say.
Went over 15 minutes here, and the idea was, whenever one would have the cover or the submission, the other would get involved. Natalya applied this armbar onto Jax, and then Jax slammed her way free of that. Flair hit this moonsault, or at least attempted to hit it, onto Jax, almost overshot her. But Natalya did a high cross onto Flair from that, and then Flair attacks Jax's left knee. The figure eight gets broken up by Natalya. She applies the sharpshooter. Jax breaks that, and then Natalya is tossed to the floor. Jax stops Flair on the turnbuckle. We get Natalya returning for a big Tower of Doom spot, but injures her knee in the process here. The figure four is applied onto Natalya. Jax with the leg drop to Flair and sends Flair out of the ring. Samoan drop to pin Natalya. 15 minutes, 13 seconds, and Asuka just went insane during this match, cheering for Natalya, and she was like the highlight of the commentary.
She added a great deal of atmosphere, as did the crowd for something like this. I thought it was like a really fast-paced match for the entirety of the whole thing. I thought it was good. I thought Natalya was really good here. Her desperation really carried it across to me, from the character storyline to the in-ring action here. So I'm actually most curious to see where this kind of like failure story is supposed to go for her.
Kayla Braxton was backstage with Drew, who was wearing his Talk Less, Clay More shirt as he was about to talk more and clay less. And he was about to leave the building, but then he's informed of this tag match that's happening and decides he is going to stick around.
Yes. Yep. What do you think of the shirt now that you've seen it like on Drew?
I would say talk less, create more. Rob Gronkowski winning the 24/7 title at WrestleMania. The trainees were not ready for that one. We get a whole recap of Gronkowski winning the 24/7 title. R-Truth sends in a video where he has discovered that Tom Brady is no longer the 24/7 champion. And he is now coming for Robin Gronk. He puts on his shoulder pads, and then we get what I am going to dub as one of the worst promos this year from Rob Gronkowski, as he addressed our truth, or should I say, our lies. And
see, that hooked me right in. I was all in after that. That was, oh man.
He's wearing these giant shades.
Oh, like Joey Janela glasses.
Yeah, and for good reason. Because when he took these glasses off, this dude was reading word for word and was not even making eye contact with the camera. Thankfully, he put these glasses back on for his end segment, and no word of a lie, his closing remarks are that I've got eyes in the back of my head. Thankfully, he didn't, because if not, he would have had no promo to read.
Okay. Look, I don't know if I'll ever create this dude Gronk on the same level as I would, somebody who is actually classified as a professional wrestler. Like, to me, he is in the realm of celebrity doing,
he was clearly reading like off like his iPad that he did not put at like eye level with his phone or whatever he was recording this on.
But that's how much can you expect from a professional football player? In the end, this is a major celebrity delivering a pro wrestling promo, which I'm sure they were more than happy with. It was like 30
seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they were happy with this because
they aired it, but it just looked so amateur.
I can set the bar pretty low for a celebrity having to do a pro wrestling promo. In the end, they hired this guy because they want to get on SportsCenter. They want to get casual football fans to tune in and be like, look at this weirdo, do a professional wrestling promo. I'm not going to judge
the SportsCenter.
Probably not. But I'm not going to judge this dude on how good his promo is. It's just, he's a celebrity.
Just look into the camera. That's all I ask.
Yeah, I guess he definitely has room to improve. Or keep the shades on.
Keep the shades on. He had the shades on. Why did he take them off? I wouldn't have noticed this if he kept the shades on. That was actually a smart idea if he realized that.
Right.
Tuesday night on FS1, we've got the FCW documentary airing, followed by Backstage, and I guess it'll be interesting how this does with no Dark Side of the Ring competition.
Interesting, okay.
It's a very good documentary if you haven't seen it. I for a WWE produced documentary, I thought this was very good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think John and I did a review of it on a double shot from a few weeks back. So if you see it and you want to hear us talk about it, join the Post Wrestling Cafe.
Then we had a Ric Flair video. He says he's had more great matches than anyone, and ever since he gave up being that greatest performer, the guy to succeed him as the greatest is Randy Orton, who he is picking. And this was more like Ric Flair just screaming at you, more so than a great Ric Flair promo.
The newly re-signed Ric Flair.
Yes, he is signed. I think he gets to keep his name of Ric Flair. Doesn't have to go to developmental as a new name or anything like that.
That was never in danger, was it?
No, I'm just joking.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I feel like this is the level of Ric Flair promo now. Like, when was the last time you heard a great Ric Flair promo?
I would guarantee you if he all of a sudden was on like a Road 2 special, I bet you we would just say, oh my God, what an incredible Ric Flair promo. I don't doubt that he has great promos in him, even at this age. But for these like 30-second things, I think they know what they want, and it's almost like the caricature of Ric Flair rather than the substance of him.
Yeah, and it's the same with Hogan. You know, whenever he's on these shows, it's just like, you know, kind of your stereotypical like Hulk Hogan type of promo. And I can at least understand why you would classify this match as the greatest match ever. If part of your intent is to get legends to come on to talk about, I guess, the great matches that they've had or their
Kobashi's going to pick Edge next week.
Oh, you think so? Yeah, for sure. So it's a way to promote Ric Flair being on your show. And again, you don't have a live audience that's paying, so you don't really disappoint anyone when you just see that it's a cell phone video. And you just, you know, you get Ric Flair on your show.
They also got Liv Morgan on the show tonight.
Oh, we also had a last ride recap, by the way.
Yes, they went through Chapter 3, which we can discuss at the end of the feedback. Okay, Liv Morgan, who is slowly replacing Alistair Black in my Monday night entertainment. You know, the biggest stumbling block in life has been my own self-worth. I don't ever remember feeling good enough, but wondering at 6 years of age what this big thing called life had in store for me. I didn't know if I would hit the sun or crash and burn, but then I found the WWE and got my gear with my name on it. I don't have all the answers because life keeps changing the questions, but what I do know is that I'm living my best life.
Mm-hmm.
This woman, I give all the credit in the world because I think that this is an incredibly difficult verbiage that she is continually given here. This is like a 60-year-old writing what they feel a millennial is going through. That's what these promos feel like. And she's doing, sure. She's living her best life with these worst promos.
I'm definitely confused. Like, I know I'm barely a millennial, you and I, John, but I'm so confused by what this new Liv Morgan character is supposed to be. She's a millennial who's searching for her identity, but what is the actual question that we're actually looking for her to answer? You know, in the form of a wrestling match or anything. Like,
she's figuring it out. She's figuring everything out.
Right.
Including these promos.
But she found the solution. She found her purpose once she found the WWE and found gear with her name on it. Now she's living her best life. So what's after that?
Yeah, I mean, sounds like you got to figure it out.
Anyway, I unfortunately, I come out of these just as confused as I am with, like, you know, Bray Wyatt promos from the past or Alistair Black promos. So my Mondays are now designed to look forward to you basically repeating these.
I want the ultimate mashup of Alistair Black explaining how he's living his best life.
Oh, like a duet?
I do not have the answers because life keeps changing these questions on me. You notice the man doesn't talk at all anymore.
He does not, no.
The Street Profits had an insert promo as they walked out for the main event, and Ford telling them to just bring it, to quote Dwayne Johnson. Next week on the show, Rey Mysterio's retirement ceremony and Seth Rollins versus Alistair Black, which could be very good.
You think this like retirement thing is going to generate any sort of buzz or difference at all?
Probably not, but they'll hype it all week.
See, these I really feel like wrestling has to be careful with its retirement stipulations, because most people I think would already come into it not really expecting anything, and it definitely when you do want to build to a Rey Mysterio retirement match, it can have negative consequences. But who knows? Who knows what's going on here with the contract and everything.
So the main event tag match here, Lashley hit a flatliner onto Ford and then a running spear. And we just got, a long beatdown of Ford until he avoided a suplex and tagged in Dawkins. But then Ford was right back involved. He was knocked off the apron, attacked the ribs. They went through the break. Dawkins got another hot tag and fired up on MVP. And then Lashley gets knocked off the apron. Ford goes after him. They then double team MVP with a spine buster, and from the heavens, when Lashley shoved Dawkins into the post, applied the full Nelson onto Ford and wouldn't let go, causing the disqualification at 11 minutes and 16 seconds. The deadly full Nelson. And that ended the match. Drew McIntyre runs out and fights with Lashley. They brawl to the floor, into the boards. The referees are signaling for help as the trainees start to come out. They get picked off one by one. And then Lashley spears Drew. More trainees come in, and they have to separate Drew and Lashley to end the show.
Weak finish for a main event, but fuck whatever. Wins and losses don't matter on the show anyway. And I'm probably going to forget about this match pretty quickly either way. So, nobody can afford a loss, so it's just whatever. This was all about the post-match anyway.
Yep, that was Raw.
The post-match was Lashley and McIntyre brawling, and then all the trainees. Did you say all that?
I went through all of it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was as memorable for you the second time of me recapping it as it was for you in real time watching it.
I apologize. I thought was pretty good.
It was fine. Yeah, just pulling them apart. I think they're doing fine with Drew and Lashley. It's not the biggest match in the world. It's not the greatest match ever, but it's really not the worst either. So, there is, if there was any independents running now, boy, do you have an opening to promote the worst match ever.
Oh, for sure. If Janela was running a show, I'm sure there'd be something like that.
That should be the Peter Avalon Brandon Cutler match on BTE.
The greatest match ever. Yeah.
The worst match ever.
Oh, the worst match ever. Yeah. I thought this was a good Raw. It was hard for me to actually even judge it based on the content alone, because I think I was still really enamored with the presentation. I really like the way that they're doing the crowd. I love the addition of the boards. To me, it's putting at least the visual of there being safety first, before making sure that you care about atmosphere, which I think is important if you're going to try to basically inch your way to making this a more and more normal show. As far as pacing goes on the show, I thought it moved really well. I feel like they managed to find an improvement over what they were trying to do last week, where they only presented 3-minute matches. This week, you had a combination of shorter matches, but also matches that, still had your commercial breaks whenever they were a bit more important. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was, a great show, but there were enough elements on it that I think the show kept moving. It was a fine show. I think with Backlash, you've kind of got your two big programs that you're promoting on the show with, Edge and Orton. I really liked Edge's promo a lot, and the Drew Lashley stuff. I think MVP is a huge difference maker in that.
Huge.
Drew's been very good, but you take MVP out, I don't think this has a sliver of interest if it's just Lashley, or if it was Lana and Lashley in that position.
Not a hope at all. Like, you need somebody. The reason why this feud, I think, is working right now is because you have these verbal altercations between somebody at the level of MVP with Drew McIntyre. To me, it's bringing the best personality you can out of Drew McIntyre. And with Lashley, like, it fills a big gap in his game. And that's having somebody, like, be the brains behind the operation.
Like, if this program extends beyond Backlash to, I think Extreme Rules is the next pay-per-view. If they get a second pay-per-view out of it, it's strictly on MVP carrying it through a second pay-per-view. That I think without it, this would be a one-and-done program, and it still may be. But I think what an addition that they got in MVP this year, from like a Royal Rumble cameo to what he has grown into during this year with the company. I think that's a really interesting story to watch.
Living up to his name.
There you go.
Yeah, like I feel like I really would have ended with the Apollo Crews match. That to me, starting the show off with it didn't feel as important to me when he did win the match. And compared to the finish that we got on this show with a non-finish for that tag match, I much would have preferred the scene of Apollo Crews going off the air celebrating that, his first U.S. title win with the whole Performance Center behind him. Would have put a lot more weight on it, and I think would have ended the show a lot better.
Yeah, you could have gone off with the celebration. You could have compromised, and if somehow Lashley and Drew still get involved, it could almost be like Apollo helping out Drew and establishing those two as Apollo's got Drew's back. You could do a tag match with them in the future. There's different ways you could have done that. Yeah, the Apollo thing was kind of, you had forgotten about it by hour 3. It was so early in the show. All right, well, let's go to the forum and see if everyone had positive or negative things to say about Raw. The poll gave the show a 5.93. And we start off with Paul from New Jersey. Glad WWE took a cue from AEW by putting some performers in the crowd. Rarely do I care about the United States title, but Apollo did a good job conveying the importance of him reaching this milestone for the last few weeks. I was genuinely intrigued by the match and happy Apollo was victorious. The Iconics cut a terrific promo as usual. My prediction is they aren't splitting up. What happened last week seems to be a way to make them more serious. Splitting them up would be a really bad idea. I agree with that. Asuka is currently doing the best character work of her career. I cannot wait until Liv Morgan passes the 10th grade. What would you do to rehab this Rollins character? It's simply not good. 7 out of 10. If you're pushing him in this heel role, okay, and the answer is not like flipping him babyface or anything like that, as a heel, I would just ditch the cult gimmick and have him be like Seth Rollins, the competitor who is incredible in ring and feels like he, should be the champion because he is really good at wrestling. And to have Buddy Murphy, who also fits that mold, to have Austin Theory, who also fits that mold under him. That would work alone. Like, what is the gimmick of the Undisputed Era? Like, do they have, are they preachers or are they anything like that? Do they have jobs? No, they're just wrestlers who are really good at wrestling, and they think they're better than everybody. That's what I want Seth Rollins to be. They're like jocks. They're wrestling jocks.
Okay, that's at least a bit more believable than a guy who, I don't know, like, is trying to, like, talk about messiahs and sermons and shit like that, and sacrifices. What? Andrew from Cape Breton. The crowd was a fresh change to have, but I still like how AEW does it with having heels and baby faces on each side. It feels almost forced that they just have all the PC people cheering and booing instead of having friends of the wrestlers out there to cheer or boo because they like them and want them to win. I feel because of this, the best match tonight when it came to the crowd was the main event with the Street Profits, as they probably know a lot of the people in the crowd really well. The show was decent tonight, so that is a positive. I also really enjoyed the three-way women's match, and everything was standard fare. The Liv Morgan stuff is still weird, though. Her Britney Spears I'm Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman shtick reminds me of Mae Valentine in NWA. Mae is this ditzy character who is doing these vlogs where she's trying to present herself as deep and thoughtful. It's great because she's not, and it's made obvious with her storyline with Royce Isaacs and Sal Rinauro. With Liv, it feels like the company wants people to think that Liv isn't coming across as ditzy, but is actually deep and thoughtful. Maybe I'm thinking about it too hard. I'm getting bored with being in the house all the time. 6 out of 10 show. Is she coming across ditzy? I don't know. That's different for everybody. I don't think so for me. I just don't know with whatever. I agree that whatever I think she's trying to convey isn't really particularly landing. It's either just too clouded in like a subtext, or just confusing. Yeah, we'll see.
Alexander writes, the lack of fans is what's kept me from enjoying WWE as much lately, so tonight's crowd was amazing. When the camera panned into the crowd at the beginning of the show, I didn't see any chairs. Did the crowd have to sit? Yeah, that was the other thing. They all appeared to be standing the entire time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I hope they were like doing this in shifts, but I mean, some of those faces seemed like they were there the whole 3 hours.
Oh my God, and the tapings afterwards too.
They were probably doing both. They were probably there for the SmackDown as well. Like you imagine they're doing this for all of them now.
I guess maybe the idea is like if you're sitting spaced out, that looks worse, I suppose, is the thing.
Dude, these are wrestlers that take bumps. Do you know what their backs must have felt like by hour 2?
Oh, their knees. Completely.
Oh. Yeah, I thought that too when I was watching this. Like, can we get them a chair?
How about a folding stool or like a cane or something?
Oh, I worked at a job once where it was like you weren't allowed to sit down for your entire shift, and it would be like 6 hours just standing. I was like, this is awful.
Man, I can't go, like I refuse to like go to concerts for even opening acts anymore because I just don't want to stand for like 3 hours, you know? Anyway, sorry, these are really old people problems.
Old man.
Is it my turn?
It's yours,
okay.
Nick from Lansing.
All right, we got a Nick from Lansing who says, one of the best Raws in recent memory, and I have no doubt the NXT trainees played a big part in that. Honestly, I just came to say how much I love that they started the show talking about they would be practicing social distancing and ending the night with a massive brawl. That's true. Absolutely phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, the plexiglass can only contain so much. I mean, come on. Jordan from Kitchener, I share the same feeling as the posters above about the crowd being awesome. Yeah, that seemed to be a big positive on the show, and I agree. Asuka was easily my MVP of the show. I don't see what everyone else does in McIntyre. We're a month into this title reign, and besides the Claymore, is there anything to this character? Apollo Crews is your new United States champion and cut one of the best promos of his WWE run. Iconics and Nikki Cross showed fire and passion in their promos. That was a nice surprise. And Edge is a reminder that WWE has trouble building stars that people see on a level.
WWE has trouble building stars that people see on a level.
Maybe he means on true main eventers.
Referring to Edge?
That's what he wrote. Yes.
I think in comparison to the current roster, to me, Edge is a true main eventer.
Certainly. Yeah. Maybe that's not what he means by this. I don't.
I'm not sure what he means.
Quite know. I think, Drew in this role, I think he's been very strong as champion. I mean,
unfortunately. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I mean, doesn't have like, a deep list of heels to work with. So they're making the best of what they have. But I think in terms of, your top babyface star, I think he's done as well as you could imagine. That's a very tough spot when you're the new babyface that gets the big coronation at Mania. That was an untraditional one this year. And then coming out of it, that's always a difficult period for a new babyface champion with their first couple of programs. And I think he's largely stepped up to the plate in a big way. Had an excellent match with Seth Rollins at the last pay-per-view. And as, great talker, good worker. Like, I don't have any complaints about Drew McIntyre right now.
Unfortunately, like, without crowds being there, he received great reactions leading up to that Brock Lesnar match. But, like, once the crowds were cut off and to see him with the belt without somebody like a Brock Lesnar, like, him against Lashley, I would really love to know how an actual crowd would respond to him. Because I think it would be quite favorable. So, like, without really the crowd essentially kind of like validating and proving that this thing is working, none of us, I suppose, could really confidently say whether or not he's doing a great job. But I think just like the raw material, he's like so confident and just such a badass and so comfortable on the microphone and really good in ring. So all these things put together, I definitely think he's doing a really good job. We got an MJ who says, I tuned into Raw for the first time in weeks for two things. One, the use of talent as crowds. Two, the second biggest golf match of Memorial Day weekend. On the latter, who was that for? I play golf. It was not remotely funny or creative. Was it for people who don't play golf? Do 7-year-olds even find that stuff funny? I don't know. It doesn't have to be stupid either. Look at the use of football jokes in the Stadium Stampede. Can WWE writers not come up with anything creative to make these sports segments remotely cool, or at least not the worst type of comedy? Meanwhile, I thought the crowds felt so forced. It just didn't sound like fans in a video game. It looked like it, too. Nobody stood out, which is a benefit AEW has received from using people ringside. AEW has outproduced them in terms of empty venue shows and has been a step with the hard cams and talent ringside. P.S. Marty, yeah, BTE. Okay. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your feedback. Seems a largely positive reaction to Raw on the whole. Also, we have the last ride to quickly discuss. I don't think this will take up too much time. I was not a big fan of this particular chapter of the last ride. I thought that a lot of this was, if you have watched any WrestleMania Rewind episodes that they produced, any of the specials on Triple H, on Shawn Michaels, covering the WrestleMania matches from 2009 to 2012, this felt like as much of a retread as we've seen in this series. And what this was all built around was like the disaster that was the Crown Jewel match that realistically is given about 5 to 7 minutes at the end of the show. And it's a disaster, but it's, to me, that this one fell way short of the first 2 episodes.
Well, I actually like a lot of those recap shows, so maybe that's why I thought this was a really good episode. I mean, to me, it was only logical if you're going to culminate this show talking about the Saudi Arabia show with Triple H and Taker, Triple H and Shawn teaming up against Taker and Kane, that you use it as an opportunity to get into, as Taker says, the last time he had, really great matches, or the highlights of his at least WrestleMania streak run. And those are the 4 matches between him and Shawn Michaels and Triple H. And I actually felt like going back and talking about those matches was integral to the story, because you understand what Taker has been trying to recapture in this final run. He wants to get the same highs as he experienced with that initial Shawn Michaels match. And I thought Shawn's story was incredibly relevant to his, because as he talks about, Shawn is somebody who he's jealous of, because Shawn has found the ability to say no. And of course, until the actual Saudi Arabia match, which to me was a big omission. Like, you've just made, like, that's really the whole point of this whole series, is the Undertaker, this inability to walk away. Shawn can, but then, like, there's no concrete reason of why Shawn agrees to do this match. It's because we all know what the reason is. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I'm watching this, and that's my question that I would come out of this. Like, why? Why did you do this after 10 years?
Drove a truckload of money, Saudi money, to my doorstep, and I couldn't say no. Like, they weren't going to say that. Like, he pretty much said, it sounded like it was going to be it was going to be fun to hang out with my friends.
You don't think all the proposals this guy's gotten from 2010 through 2018, that none of them incorporated some fun elements in them? Yeah, that's it. This was too much to pass up. Moonsaulting to the floor, no one catches me. There was just too much fun. Yeah. A night off, as Hunters called it.
Yeah. But no, like, I look at this as, like, how compelling would this be for somebody who was a bit of a layman, similar to me watching something like, The Last Dance. Would a seasoned football fan going back and revisiting, all those older series, would that be boring to them? I don't know. But for me, it was captivating, because a lot of that stuff I'm learning about for the first time. And so I thought it was actually really important that they got into some of these older matches.
I didn't mind, what in principle, like, they did do. Like, it makes the Crown Jewel disaster much more impactful with the context of what great matches they put together. I guess it's just because we have been through, and yeah, I'm speaking as someone that maybe is more critical than others that are just watching this fresh, that to me was like, it was so much of it. It was, the whole episode was dedicated to this, that it just felt much more in line with your regular WWE production for most of this, in terms of, shining a light on these WrestleMania matches. I just thought I just didn't take as much away from this episode as I did the first 2. This was a lot less of Undertaker himself. Like, we got some introspective moments here, but a lot of it was just, it just felt very much, from one thing to the next. And then we do the rematches.
Certainly, like in this documentary, maybe you do get a sense that they were trying to pad this one out so that they could drag it to like 5 episodes or something.
That's what this episode felt like to me.
But I maintain that like all that stuff is relevant though to the Undertaker's story here, and I thought like it was a really good creative choice to bundle like the legacy of his matches with Shawn and Hunter into the overall story that they're trying to tell. What I do find interesting is how like, much like in the first episode, we end off the first episode on a pretty positive note. Okay, like he trained really hard. He struggled through it, but he got through that match with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 34. And backstage, it's all high fives. Vince says he's happy with it, and Taker is relieved. But then we start episode 2 as Taker looks back at that moment with complete disappointment, and that becomes the issue and the inciting incident that they have to fix in episode 2. This episode 3 was really similar as well, because you ended episode 2 on another positive note with him having that match with John Cena, like coming out of it unscathed and, actually looking good. But episode 3 starts off with just, I was so disappointed that match was only 3 minutes and I really need more. And so I guess it just, really shows you that like what they're trying to say is clear, that this guy will never be happy. And that's what Michelle McCool pretty much like comes to the conclusion with at the end. It doesn't matter what happens in ring with him. Like, he's not going to stop. And to me, this was just like, further kind of like proving that point that this guy kind of has like I would almost say an addiction, or at least a level of OCD when it comes to, wanting to find that perfect moment. He's like the guy at the blackjack table, like one more, especially if he just lost the last one. Oh, I got to win. But then you win and you think about staying a bit longer. So I thought that this whole episode was kind of done to like push that.
Yeah, I thought like they really hit that at the end where, Shawn says this is like chasing the dragon and that is not healthy. And Michelle, reacting to the crown jewel match, realizes instantly it's just the vicious cycle about to start all over again because now he has to redeem himself. And we go to the highlights of the next episode where it's the Goldberg match in Saudi Arabia, where this guy is just cursed going to Saudi Arabia. And is there a point
the Rusev one was okay.
Yeah, they did show some highlights of the first one, the casket match, but then we had the follow-ups. Like, I feel at the end of this, like the Undertaker, he's, this universally, revered character in WWE history. I think, though, that by the end of this, there is kind of, I think they're almost pushing even the ardent Undertaker fan to somewhat have like this, I don't want to say like negativity towards him, but almost like look at how many wrestlers have left this industry with little to nothing to show for it, destroyed their bodies. Here is a guy that has been one of the most successful ever, and an inability to kind of be able to walk away from that at that point. I think that it almost paints the Undertaker like in this.
You want to see him stop.
You want to see him stop, but you're also kind of frustrated that you can't with, as someone with a child, with a family, and why are you doing this at this point? And there is a certain like whatever you want to say, like the positive way would be to say, oh, it's his drive. It's his self-confidence. The other way would be to describe it's like it's an ego fill at a certain point. It's also a financial one too, but I think like the Undertaker becomes also like this figure that it is kind of hard to be rooting for this guy at any point by the end of this episode.
Certainly, just even watching the matches, like I came out of watching WrestleMania 4 like with that mentality. Like I was ready to see this guy retire, and I didn't want to see him continue to like attempt to just like tarnish his excellent legacy. But I think it's much like how this story plays out in sports. MMA fighters coming back and trying to like get that last great match or something like that. Except I guess the difference in MMA, you could really get hurt, like almost unquestionably, you could really get hurt.
Mike Tyson right now, he's like getting offers to fight at 53, like just insane. Like the Chuck Liddell fight a year and a half ago.
But I guarantee you a lot of people are going to want to watch, because I think we all really like, bond to that like Rocky, and I guess in this case Rocky Balboa story of like the guy that you've loved in the past wanting to like end his career on a high note. It's a very romantic like story that I think we all want to cheer for him for. So, we don't know what the final conclusion of this documentary is. It could very well be him actually retiring, or it could be him like chasing for that one last match, and then, using this entire documentary story to like get people to try to tune in, because this is the Undertaker, or specifically Mark Calloway, looking for his greatest match ever, or one last great match.
I think he's, though, eliminated that ability to have that great moment. Like for himself, maybe like go out on a great match, but in terms of any kind of like if he were to use episode 5 to just call it a career, I don't think people would even take it all that seriously. I don't think he necessarily would. Even if he means it in the moment, I don't like that's your biggest takeaway from this series is you can't believe this guy. He is going to replace Terry Funk when it comes to wrestling retirements, I think, for this generation. And even if he were to promote something as the last, to me, WrestleMania 33, you gave up any ability to have that big send off, that big public goodbye. That was given, you get one of those, and once it's done, you can come back, but you don't get another one that's going to feel anywhere important, because there will always be that skepticism, I think, naturally.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't think you could do it again unless he says, I swear, or something. I promise. This is really...
the guy literally left all his stuff in the ring. Like, there was nothing more concrete than that. And once you come back from that, it's pretty tough at that point, I think, for anyone to really believe it's done. And I mean, that's the other element to this is the further this goes for him, it's just going to be uglier, I think. Like he's not going to ever be able to have, the 4-star classic again. I think those days are well beyond him. And
see, I will say though, like this particular show, the Super Showdown match, like it was really not Taker's fault. Like Taker looked actually decent, like in that match. It was Hunter because of the torn pec, and I think in some cases just like, other things going wrong.
They don't focus enough on that Australia match. They went almost 30 minutes, him and Hunter, and it's like that was not a good match. It was
kind of
just
like
not
come out
good.
Of that one like kind of happy with it.
Yeah, which is pretty. That's
I
some
don't
revisionism,
remember it, to be honest.
Yeah, I recall not liking it at all. It was a dragging main event. 27 and a half minutes, those two went.
Oh, my God. The torn pec thing I found really interesting, because I think we had heard about it after, but like I hadn't really rewatched the match, and I actually did after this, to see the actual moment that Hunter tore his pec, and it just, it definitely made the match more compelling, seeing Triple H attempt to perform with it. It very much was like that torn quad match from 2001. It felt like an incredibly gutsy performance.
I will say this: there is certainly an appreciation for Shawn Michaels. Like, this guy is completely done mentally. Like, after that Crown Jewel match, dude, he's like just laughing about it backstage. This guy is just, he has moved on.
He was certainly disappointed. He's like, we missed it by this much, which is like, a pretty big gap.
See, I took that as him almost like just like not that he wasn't taking it seriously, but just like, I don't know. He seemed the least affected in terms of just like, bad match, whatever. Like he didn't view this. Compare it to, he did get that great retirement, has this awful match. He is not conflicted in any way about I got to redeem myself or anything like that. It's just this guy flipped the switch in 2010 and it was done. He did this one night. It sucked. Didn't drive him back. And I think that is something that is proven to be very, very difficult for many people to do. But Shawn has that.
It's very true. Like, you compare Shawn post-retirement to like, somebody like Taker in the midst of retirement, or even somebody like Brett, which I think is more so like the complete deep end of like, really, really, really caring about your legacy, I suppose. Shawn just seems, pretty detached.
So they are not running another one of these until June 14th. That's when Chapter 4 will air. And then the Sunday after that is the 5th chapter, which is the last one. So we have a few weeks off before the next episode.
It makes sense because I think they want to like tail it after TakeOver and also Backlash.
The next one is Backlash, and then the other one is the week after that.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. That would have made sense to air it after TakeOver and then air it. Well, I guess they put them up Sunday morning, but then they air it on the network right after the pay-per-view too. But
right.
Anyway, so we have a few weeks off from that, and I guess that's we'll go into the Goldberg match. That's followed. They do the Extreme Rules match the following month, which actually was a very good match with Reigns and Undertaker against Drew McIntyre and Shane McMahon. That I remember being a pretty good match. And what does he do after that?
So he's not
the
on
Boneyard
Mania?
match.
Yeah.
Boneyard. That's about it. We've got that's kind of the chronology at that point. So, yeah.
So we'll
whatever
see what happens at the end
of season 5 or episode 5.
I got 3 words for you.
Oh
Go
my God!
Fuck yourself.
That was the best scene of this whole fucking episode for me. Was the outtake of Kane and Undertaker doing a promo. And go fuck yourself. Dude, I thought that was the best scene that they included here. It was awesome.
I love that. I still definitely get a real kick out of like seeing, Undertaker out of character in these very like real, just like fun backstage moments of him like playing cards. Just to even see like wrestlers be honest and critical about their own work, I find still incredibly refreshing.
One thing they omitted, and maybe just for time, they didn't go down this path, but they kind of just tell the story of like the 2 Shawn matches followed by the 2 Hunter matches and make it seem like it was just one was going to go after the other. And I mean, just today, Drew McIntyre did that interview saying at one point he was kind of pegged to face Undertaker in 2010, which ends up being the retirement match with Michaels. But more important is 2011, which is the first Hunter match. They were hoping to do Undertaker Brock Lesnar that year. That was the whole bit with Ariel Helwani to try and set up WrestleMania, but Brock could not do WrestleMania.
Oh, interesting. Right.
So,
cool.
Anyway, that is it, everyone. We're going to wrap things up. But Tuesday night, we did not mention this earlier. Rewind-A-Wai number 62 is dropping. And Way, what are we chatting about Tuesday night?
We are traveling back to 2015. WrestleMania play button.
That's right. We're hitting rewind, but we're going to hit the play button on Tuesday night.
Yeah, of course. This is a show that, to some people might not have been that long ago, but I think in wrestling time, a lot has changed since that time. So it's to me, it's always kind of fun to like go back to some of these more recent ones because for me, at least, John, like this is the first time I'll be watching this one like on video because you and I were there live, so maybe we could share some stories. Of course, this one features Triple H versus Sting, Rusev and a tank taking on John Cena, the aforementioned Undertaker taking on Bray Wyatt, and of course Roman Reigns. Oh, sorry, never mind. Seth Rollins defeating Brock Lesnar.
That's the main event. Yeah. Yes, with a live performance with Kid Ink and Skylar Grey.
Totally don't remember that at all. But
yes.
Okay. And the prettiest RKO I think there will ever be.
Perhaps. I decided to watch this video in sync with the audio, unlike how we had to experience it in the press box that night.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
We will share that story on Tuesday and many more to come. This was selected by David Porges, our Espresso executive producer, who will also join us to share why he chose this event. And we'll go through the news of WrestleMania weekend 2015 and the trivia gauntlet. So all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe will get that show Tuesday night. So that's all for us.
As well as live access to the Friday Rewind-A-SmackDown. Live.
That's right. Friday night. 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be live with Rewind-A-SmackDown, including your phone calls. So look forward to that. Go to postwrestling.com. Check out all of the shows. All of the news is there. And that's it. We'll speak with you on Tuesday night.